Once upon a time in Italy, a princess was born. Her parents, King Albano and Queen Romina, named their daughter Ylenia, dreaming of one day passing on their throne of showbiz rulers to her. Little did they know that the princess belonged not to them, nor to their realm, nor even to this world, and that soon she would leave them. This is the story of what happened to Ylenia Carrisi, the eldest daughter of Bano and Romina Power, a princess who claimed to belong to the water. Once upon a time in Italy. As befitting a princess, the girl was beautiful. They say beautiful children are born from the mixing of blood. Well, Ylenia was proof of that. She inherited a cocktail of Italian, Dutch, German, French, Spanish and American genes from her ancestors. Equally explosive was the mixture of her parents' mentalities. Albano, hailing from a family of poor peasants who didn't consider singing a trade worthy of a man. He began his ascent to the top of the charts as a day laborer. Even after becoming the king of the global music scene, he remained a part of the patriarchal reality of the Italian South, where almost everyone is a devout Catholic, deeply attached to their native village, parental home, especially to mom, where marriage happens once and for all, and divorce is considered a disaster and disgrace. Romina, not just an American, but a Hollywood American. Her parents were famous actors. Her mother, Linda Christian, played James Bond's first girlfriend, and her father, Tyrone Power, was Zorro. They each had 3 marriages, as is customary in Hollywood. Romina was never a goody two-shoes. She rebelled against her mother for most of her life, and a scattered family across the world was normal for her. Never suffering from excess conservatism, she began her career with role in erotic movie. Considers India the best place on earth, and chose the Buddhist as her spiritual mentor. But love knows no rules, and in 1967, on the set of the film In the Sun, a romance sparked between the young Romina and Albano. Both mothers considered this connection a misalliance, which is not surprising. One had envisioned her daughter marrying an English aristocrat, the other a modest and obedient villager. So it's quite possible that together they would have put an end to the romance, but here comes the princess on the stage. Or rather, it turns out that she is supposed to appear, and the lovers are not married. On July 26, 1970, the future king and queen walked down the aisle. By November 29th, just 4 months later, they become the happy parents of Ylenia Maria Solon. Whatever the mothers may have thought, it really was a very happy family. The king and queen adored each other and their daughter, and they pursued their favorite activities. The public adored them, they toured extensively, and felt great both traveling the world and at their estate. Rumors have it, though, that later on things weren't as magical, that the king became a greedy tyrant and the queen was not happy with him. It's quite possible because divorces don't happen out of nowhere, and Romina initiated it. On the other hand, she lived with Albano until their silver wedding anniversary and gave birth to 4 children by him. 3 years after Ylenia, their son Yari. 15 years later, their second daughter Christelle, and another 2 years later, their youngest daughter Romina Jr. Anyway, whatever happened later on, the princess's childhood was cloudless, and she grew up to be beautiful, intelligent, loving and loved by all, much to her parents' delight. She knew 5 languages. They say she learned Russian in just a month during her parents' tour in Russia, wrote poetry and prose, painted. Ylenia was friends with her brother, took care of her younger sisters, and listened to her mom and dad. And she loved the sea, and every time before diving in, she would say like a charm, "I belong to the water." They say princesses are born with golden spoons in their mouths. Ylenia's parents reined in pop music, so she inherited a golden microphone at birth. At the age of 13, she starred in a movie, in a script written by her father with him playing her grandfather, her mother playing her grandmother, and her brother Yari, unexpectedly, playing her brother. At 17, Ylenia sang on the big stage for the first time, duetting with her mother a song about the complicated relationship between parents and their growing daughter. And at 19, she debuted on television as a valet on the game show Wheel of Fortune. A valet is an assistant to the host, and her role is more than just revealing letters on the screen. But according to Wikipedia, the performers don't necessarily have the talents of an actress, dancer, or singer. Perhaps young Ylenia is indeed not naturally born for the stage. She's shy and looks somewhat stiff on screen, although she clearly tries. But she's sweet, charming, and very, very beautiful. And let's not discount her royal parents' connections. So surely a bright future awaited her in showbiz, but those born with a golden spoon in their mouths are usually envied. Few consider how those whose mouths are filled from birth feel, and whether it's really that great. Albano and Romina don't say whether it was their initiative or if their daughter dreamed of starting the path to fame herself, but the fact that she quickly veered off this path is evident. The girl decided to become a writer. With her excellent language and literary abilities, she effortlessly entered King's College in London, where, thanks to excellent grades, she studied for free, and even received an offer to stay on as a teacher after college. Anyway, everything was going well until something went wrong. In princess tales, there's always something that goes wrong. An evil wizard, a magic potion, an enchanted kingdom. Princes beautiful and not so much, the princess's whims finally. There's no telling what can happen in fairy tales. This all happened and almost immediately, so hardly anyone knows exactly how it all started. The parents prefer to think it was the work of an evil wizard. He nods toward the princess's character, and the all-knowing public is convinced it's the potion that caused all the trouble. Albano claims he sensed the approaching trouble a year earlier, when the princess changed drastically. He says he could clearly see what was happening back when they were all vacationing together in America over the summer. Ylenia, after smoking marijuana, began behaving strangely, and once even threw herself into the river and almost drowned. It's unknown if drugs were part of Ylenia's life before, but during this trip, another evil wizard came into her life, in the guise of either a beautiful prince or a wise mentor. And yet he didn't even search for the princess. A restless soul found him on its own. In July 1993, wandering alone through the streets of New Orleans, Ylenia notices a black musician on one of the corners of the French Quarter, playing the trumpet over a case filled with change. It's Alexander Mazaka, and although he's 54 and he looks even older, there always seems to be plenty of young girls around him. He was surely a wizard. Otherwise, it's impossible to explain how a homeless, poor, unkempt old man could attract the attention of young and beautiful girls. Surely through black magic and potions. It was rumored that Mazaka hypnotized his girlfriends, pumped them with drugs, and psychologically and physically abused them. There were many accusations, and although he was never officially recognized as guilty, Ylenia's parents were thrilled with his friendship, of course. According to them, in the girl's diary, Mazaka appears as both a sage and a teacher, and as a manipulator and seducer. Apparently she complained that he tried to get her hooked on crack and seduced her. The guru himself insists he was always just a friend, and if he gave Ylenia anything, it was only books and good advice. Why didn't the adult friend advise the young girl to stay off the streets of a city where people disappear every day? Why did he only befriend young girls, and not, at least for variety's sake, adult boys like himself? These questions are, of course, rhetorical. And of course, by the time Ylenia arrived in New Orleans, she was no longer the obedient daughter who unquestioningly followed her parents' instructions. The rebels' battles for her freedom had already been fought. But the main battle of this story happened then, and it was with the evil wizard Mazaka. A battle that the king and queen lost. To rescue the princess from the clutches of the black mage, they did what they could. Dad tore and raged and forbade. Mom conducted explanatory undermining work and burned the postcard sent by Mazaka in the name of their daughter. But Ylenia, being of legal age, couldn't be locked away. So the sessions with the guru continued. In another case, everything would have ended as soon as the family left America. But unfortunately, it didn't. Ylenia wasn't the only fish caught in Mazaka's net, but she was the golden one. And you can send more than one postcard to a golden fish. So her parents couldn't completely sever this connection. Or perhaps it wasn't about the wizard Mazaka at all, but about New Orleans and its French Quarter, into whose dilapidated atmosphere the princess fell head over heels. So much so that she decided to write a book about its inhabitants, the homeless street musicians, a book that would shake up the entire ossified bourgeois world. Ylenia, a 23-year-old idealist and rebel, like many young people, rushes headlong into everything new, and believes that to do so she must destroy all ties with the old. Never having experienced need or danger, the young writer believes that to immerse herself in her material, she needs to live without a roof over her head, in close contact with her homeless and street heroes. Unaware of the struggle of climbing the career ladder, she decides to drop out just one exam short of her diploma and focus on her book. Never having known sorrow, she sees her boyfriend's betrayal as a reason to go to the other end of the world and live there, in a shack and in solitude. The fact that the homeless usually don't have money for transoceanic flights doesn't bother her. And the princess flies to Belize, a tiny tropical country in Central America. And who knows why Belize? Maybe because there are few whites and few people in general. Or maybe, on the contrary, because everyone speaks English there and is very friendly. Perhaps her free-spirited nature was attracted by the almost complete absence of police, or maybe by the availability of weed. Brother Yari believed that Belize had bad dark energy. Ylenia replied that it was heaven on earth. And there's a lot of water in Belize. Swamps, mangroves, rivers, waterfalls. The name Belize, translated from the Mayan language, means murky waters. They apparently brought our princess to the village of Hopkins, where in a beach shack by the ocean, the one belonging to water settled in. What the princess was looking for there and whether she found it remains a mystery. When her parents, who were fairly close at the time in Ecuador, invited her to come celebrate Christmas with them, she refused. She said, "I'm fine here. I don't want to fly by plane, and what does it matter to you where I am anyway?" Sensing trouble, the king and queen didn't give up. They sent her brother to fetch her. He was only a day late. Arriving in Hopkins, Yari discovered that Ylenia, who preferred solitude and didn't want to use airplanes, had flown to New Orleans. There she immediately went to the French Quarter, where Malmard on the same corner and in roughly the same state, she found Alexander Mazakila. Most participants in this story consider Mazakila to be an evil demon. The king and queen are convinced he is the main culprit in what happened to the princess. One can understand them, but there is an undeniable fact. Mazakila couldn't have gotten hold of the princess if she hadn't wanted it. Finding a person even at the end of the earth via mobile communication became possible much later, and it's difficult to hypnotize someone via postcard. But even if Mazakila lured Ylenia to New Orleans, he could only do so if she herself gave him her addresses. In England, in Italy, finally in Belize. And then, by herself, she flew in, found him, and dragged him to a hotel, where, on her own of course, she booked a room for two. Was the princess in love with the wizard? The king and queen insist unanimously it's impossible. Hotel staff also say that they didn't look like a couple in love and the room had separate beds. Most likely it wasn't about love at all, and most likely the princess flew to New Orleans for creative exploration. Well, she had to write her book, and how many homeless musicians could she find in that beach village? Or maybe she just invited an old buddy over to talk about life, smoke a joint, well, and to warm up. December nights in New Orleans can be below freezing. Considering the princess's overwhelming humanism and complete lack of not only prejudices but also caution, the version seems quite plausible, and it perfectly fits those few details about the subsequent days that are considered accurate, and unfortunately do not clarify anything. So, on December 30th, Ylenia and Mazakila checked into a cheap boarding house. Every day, Ylenia took her notebook, camera, and went for a walk. Alone, without Mazakila, he continued his show business on the corner of the French Boulevard. Ylenia, though, approached him, listened for a while, and then wandered around the slums. This is what Mazakila says, but this is confirmed by Albano, who spoke with almost every resident of the district. On December 31st, it was already January 1st in Italy, Ylenia called her parents, wished them a happy new year, and her grandmother a happy birthday. And although the parents didn't like that their daughter was back in New Orleans, nothing in her voice or words alarmed them. Nothing made them rush headlong across the ocean to save her. Maybe if they had come, they could have changed everything. Or maybe not, as they couldn't do it in the summer for the same reason. Ylenia, being of legal age, lives where she wants and goes where she wants. And the times were different. You couldn't make a call on a mobile, you couldn't track via GPS, you couldn't see transactions on a bank card. And that's why no one knows exactly when Ylenia disappeared. The hotel owner says she saw her on January 6th, and that's the last information accepted as fact, although the owner can hardly know for sure whether Ylenia returned to the hotel later. The statements of the Croatian fisherman, the bartender, the owners of the wine shop, who swear they saw Ylenia at different times over at least another week, are ignored by the police, who prefer the suicide version on the night of January 6th to 7th, which is not surprising because otherwise they would have to look for the girl. Like thousands of other missing persons, and all to the same police department, which doesn't even have a couple of dozen detectives. Searching, knowing whether the girl is alive or not, the chances of finding her are still negligible. So the version of the New Orleans aquarium guard, Albert Cordova, who reported that he saw Ylenia throw herself into the Mississippi River and drown, suited the investigators more than enough. True, at first he identified a 15-year-old teenager from a photograph, Susan Brooke Jevons, but the girl was found on her own. They didn't find the body of the drowned girl to establish her identity for sure, and Cordova also thought the photos of Ylenia looked similar. Albano met with the guard and found his story believable, as he told them that the girl jumped into the water saying, "I belong to the water." And then Romina met with the same guard, and he changed his mind again. Either she really convinced him that Ylenia looked different, or he just couldn't bring himself to say that she couldn't know how the girl was dressed and styled that day, and he didn't want to take away the mother's hope. But all this was later, and for now the king and queen remain in ignorance. Although they don't like that the princess is in New Orleans again, they believe that the princess is wandering around the city and writing a book. Maybe that's what happened, just no one paid attention to the movements of one of the many tourists. Until Mazaka brought Ylenia's backpack to the reception and tried to check out of the hotel, paying with traveler's checks made out to Ylenia. That's when, on January 14th, the hotel owner reported her missing to the police, and the parents got involved in the case. As is usual in such cases, accusations of inaction were heaped on the detectives. There was particular dissatisfaction with the insufficient attention given to Mazakela's role. On the one hand, he is indeed not a positive character, and at his cohabitant's house they found Ylenia's jacket, lighter, and audio player. On the other hand, if the girl dragged a vagabond into her room, then maybe she even gave him the items herself. It's understandable that he most likely stole them, but for that there's absolutely no need to be sure that Ylenia won't return, whatever they might say on the TV show. Of course, Mazaka can be blamed for Ylenia's disappearance. Considering his lifestyle and track record, he'd fit the bill even if you blamed him for everything. And on the other hand, what to blame him for? There's absolutely no hint that something happened to the girl. No drop of blood, no signs of struggle, no screams from the room. And what if she returns the next day as if nothing happened? Because at that moment, it was all about how a wandering-minded foreign adult, who had long lived apart from her family, didn't send her parents a postcard for Christmas. And yet they somehow decided that she needed saving from something unknown. Of course, one can sympathize with the parents, but if it's a crime, it needs to be solved. But how? So it's unlikely that the police deliberately covered for Mazaka, although it's quite possible that he was an informant. It's just that the principle of no body, no case is universal, and the return of adult children to the family fold is a problem for parents. Ylenia's parents searched for her. The father went through all the slums of the French Quarter, almost crawling into every crevice and talking to every inhabitant, while the mother spent days on the phone, checking every, even the most improbable message. The Italian consulate and numerous TV shows got involved. They say Albano even turned to the Sicilian mafia for help. It's quite possible, but still, with no result. Neither alive nor dead has Ylenia been found to this day. Many think she just ran away, and is living peacefully under a false name in some tropical country. Not a month goes by without a new version appearing online. Ylenia in Arizona, in a monastery, in Germany in a totalitarian sect, in a drug rehabilitation center in Santo Domingo, in Russia among the homeless. Albano hides her at home in San Marco Cellino. She's a sex slave, either to an Arab sheikh in a harem or to Louisiana riffraff in a barn. In 2015, Interpol suddenly decided to check whether Ylenia was one of the unidentified victims of a maniac, whose murder he confessed to 10 years before that. The family provided DNA. No relationship was confirmed. And in 2019, the whole country seriously discussed whether Ylenia was seen by a photographer 20 years before that at a train station in Venice. Because when he approached her from behind and yelled, "Ylenia?" she turned around and recoiled. In 2006, Albano admitted that he believed in the version of drug-induced suicide. That deep down he believed it when he talked to the aquarium guard and saw the rabble Ylenia hung out with in New Orleans. He just preferred to hope. But now he's not young and must put things in order. And in 2014, at the request of Ylenia's father, the court declared Ylenia Carrisi presumed deceased. Romina was furious. All these years she believes that Ylenia is alive, posts her photos on social media, and continues to search. Where Mazaka is now is unknown. Most likely, he's dead. He should be over 80, and with his lifestyle, he could only live to such an age with the help of black magic. Grandmother Linda died, who until her last day told reporters that Ylenia was alive and would return on the day of her funeral. Aunt Terrin died, Romina's younger sister who Ylenia incredibly resembled. Grandpa Carmelo and Grandma Yolanda also died. And Ylenia, whether she left her parents or life, left voluntarily or was forced out, in essence, it doesn't matter anymore. Even if fate takes pity on the parents and the one who was once called Ylenia Maria's soul returns to them, it won't be her anymore. Princess Ylenia is no more. No one knows when she died. Perhaps the day she told her parents that show business didn't interest her. Maybe when she first tried weeds. Maybe when she preferred the slums of New Orleans to their respectable life. Or maybe she never existed. Just a girl, belonging to the water, accidentally born into a family of stars. Once upon a time, in Italy,